So welcome back at the European Science Festival. We are at point 3 of our program. We named the topic Discovering, Guiding and Developing Talented Young People for New Generation of European Researchers. And our next guest is an expert in that field. His name is Dr. Colm O'Reilly. He is the director of the Irish Centre for Talented Youth at Dublin City University. So let's hear his take on the topic of developing young talents. Mr. O'Reilly, greetings to Ireland. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Mr. O'Reilly, I'm very sorry we can't hear you yet.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So
I'm delighted.
Once again, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here. Always a great fan. I love visiting Slovenia, and hopefully once the pandemic is over, I'll get a chance to do so again. But I'm delighted to I'm delighted to talk to you today a little bit about some of the work we do with some bright young students. I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully that's going to work. Yes. So what we're going to talk about is working with young people in science. And okay. So I work here at Dublin City University, and Dublin City University is one of the newer universities in Ireland, and it was very much formed to work for people who wanted to work in the science and engineering industry. Initially, it was quite job focused, and it attracted a lot of interest from pharmaceutical companies and technological companies that set up in Ireland. I'm sure people are quite aware Ireland is a technological hub in those particular areas. And it's also kind of the home of innovative and new projects. And they're very interested in trying things that other universities had never done, and something that would give maybe a longer impact for younger people who may be interested in things like science and engineering. So education has always been a priority. It's a big thing in Ireland. Obviously, we don't have as many natural resources as many other countries. So it's very important to have a highly educated workforce, but also to have people who are interested and innovative in areas of STEM. So with that in mind, our university kind of partnered with the Centre for Talented Youth in America, Johns Hopkins University, to start a program to work with bright, young Irish students called the Centre for Talented Youth in Ireland. And here's our kind of mission statement in relation to what we're trying to do in that regard. That's to identify and assess high ability students, to provide some challenging coursework in the form of Saturday, summer and correspondence courses, to support parents and teachers in that regard, and also to do some important research in the field of gifted education and people who may be interested in STEM related subjects. It's kind of expanded outside the realm of just Dublin City University, and we currently would have centres all around Ireland. We also have many international students too, which I can explain or talk about later on. But we have centres in various third-level institutions around Ireland where students can come and get upskilled in particular courses and fields. And I'll explain a bit about that as I go through my presentation. Just to kind of give you an idea of the numbers, and Ireland is not a huge country by any stretch of the imagination. We currently have a population of about 5 million people. But in 2018-19, and I use those figures because obviously due to COVID and different things, we haven't got as many people coming on campus in the last year or two, but we're gradually re-entering that sphere again at the moment. But up to 2019, we used to be attracting around 6,200 students a year. We'd run about 240 academic courses. We assess about 3,000 students a year, and we'd employ about 250 part-time staff who would work with these students on particular projects and areas. And so to date, we've been around for over 25 years. We've had about 70,000 students attending programs. And I think in relation to these type of programs, or in relation to working with young people and science, and I really think these festivals are important at attracting and developing young talent and getting people more motivated and interested, we kind of look at 4 key areas which we think are important, but I think they're not just unique to Ireland or unique to our program. They're pretty much things that are worldwide related to young people being interested in things like science. First of all, we need to challenge these students. I think too often we're looking at them being at school and working at curriculum-based material, which sometimes is not challenging enough for them. It's the same related to things like science, where we want people to be very specialized and innovative and interested in very topical, up-to-date themes, yet our textbooks are pretty much written 10, 15 years ago and are out of date related to that. And so it's very difficult for the students to be sufficiently challenged to achieve at the level that we know some of these outstanding students can achieve. They also need to be valued. So we need to kind of make sure that we offer them opportunities whereby they can feel that their contribution to new knowledge and to learning and to developing new ideas is something that we care about or value. Because too often in school, we're quite focused on, making sure that overall participation is high and that individual participation on a high level is something that may not be rewarded, or people may not get opportunities in that area. Also, I think a lot of these students need to find, and I think that these peer group and these festivals, activities, stuff that Chilla was talking about earlier, they're very important networks for other people to find similar kindred spirits or people who are interested in the same things as themselves. And I think that we can't really underestimate the value of that. Too often we can overly focus on academic development of a lot of these people, but ultimately some of their success can be down to them working with other people who are similar to themselves and finding people who understand them and can challenge them and move them on to another level. So peer group is important. And finally, this kind of needs to be accepted as an individual. I think that we constantly work on students and try and conform them towards what we perceive they should like or what they should be good at, rather than kind of, trying to support or endorse their creative spirit and for them to do something a little bit different and beyond what would normally be expected of them. What I would normally work on and where I work, and again, it's a similar model in different countries, and I definitely encourage people watching this or looking at this laterally based in universities who don't have these programs to think about implementing them or putting them into their institutions, because they're hugely beneficial for everyone involved. So we would have a situation where students come to university, take college-like courses from ages as young as 6 and up to 17. Most people in Ireland attend university at age 18. And the challenge would be at a level of ability, as we talked about, that would be what they're capable of, not what the school or what society would perceive that to be. They'd meet other students like themselves, and they can take courses in things like aeronautical engineering, medicine, marine biology, theoretical physics, many of these subjects that would normally be studied at a university level. And I'm going to talk to you today a bit about 4 different programs that we run within our university for these students. The last one is actually part of a much larger initiative that other people are involved in. And I would encourage you, if you're watching this back or listening, to kind of think about each of them individually and see which one might suit best. Sometimes it's all of them. These are kind of stuff that we've developed and worked on over the last 20 years or so that we find are very successful with these young, creative, very academically focused, brilliant minds. Saturday courses, early university entrance, early research network, and global and talent mentoring. So the type of Saturday and summer courses that we're talking about are illustrated here, like, we can do biotechnology or engineering or game theory or app design or medicine. Again, you're constantly trying to work on things that move with the latest advances in technology. I don't think there's any point in running courses that might have been popular 15 years ago, but nowadays people are not interested in. I think technology has changed. Our access to new information and to new resources has changed our thinking in relation to that. So it has to be current. And look, universities are great places for putting on current materials and for having research where people are doing cutting edge stuff. And that's what makes that more interesting and exciting. And what we try and do with our classes for all ages is to have our teachers to be experts in the particular subjects, because I think that sometimes in school, we can be teaching science, or we can have a science teacher who has a certain level of knowledge, but it's not beyond what they're teaching on that particular day or within that particular curriculum. I think that bright, young, energized young researchers, young people who are very smart in particular areas need experts in those fields. They need role models and people they can relate to. Universities are great places because we have these PhD students who are usually working in these fields, and they can act as good kind of role models for these particular students. The methodologies that we would use would typically be very student-centered. And I think that this is very important too, because I think that too often we're using curriculum or textbooks, or we're driven by working with things that are very, teacher focused or overall focus, and moving away from what the students actually need. So a lot of the time we spend discussing with the students what you want to actually learn, and we try and teach them that. And I think it's important for the students to get challenged and to guide the direction of learning they're interested in. And again, let's try and use, I've been dipping in and out of this festival for the last couple of days, listening to people talk. And I think we're all on the same page here. And what we need is a more problem solving, open-ended learning, group work-based thing rather than teacher-led curriculum, which I think can lead to a one-dimensional outcome, and also people not quite fulfilling the potential that they possibly have. I'll talk a little bit about early university entrance now. It's a really nice program that sometimes people look at and say, gosh, we wouldn't implement that in our university because we've heard negative stories about people being too young to attend university and socially not being able for it. And, a lot of the failures highlighted in these early university entrance programs are stuff that would come up on web searches or things like that. But the reality is actually quite different when you actually implement and run them. We won't run for 15-year-olds, and in Ireland, 15 to 16-year-olds have like a gap year in their education related to, they do their cycle up to 12 to 15 at secondary school, and they have an exam, and then they have a 2-year senior cycle before they can go to university. And the year in between is supposed to be kind of a year, which is everybody does, but it's mostly kind of work experience or doing stuff that's different to what they'd normally do every day in school. So we introduced this program based on a kind of an academic model whereby these students could come to university campuses and take college modules. Their curriculum is much more flexible at school, their attendance is different, and they would come to the university and take 2 courses from first-year university modules. And they would either attend, or sometimes both, semester 1 or semester 2 is the way our university works, 13-week modules. And at the end of it, they could take the exams with the regular students, but mostly they were taking these courses just, we would have our own tutors in to teach them concurrently with the third level students. So therefore the peer group that they would be mixing with would be their own and their own age. And they would be just getting the benefits of the added academic excitement, the idea of visiting a university campus, and the chance to meet some people who are interested in the same things as themselves. And they also had, as I talked about, the failure of these programs is sometimes not having a good enough support mechanism in place, as well as having access to ourselves who work in the university every day. They only have to come once a week. They go back to their own school friends for the rest of the week. So it's a nice balanced hybrid kind of a model that is used quite effectively with these students. And why would people do that? And I think that the real thing is to get an academic experience. Sometimes the complaints about having these gap years in school is that for people who are academically focused, they're a little bit not educational enough. So therefore, this was a good kind of a gap, a way of filling that gap. And also the models that we'd use in university would allow them to have more autonomy than they would have in school, where they're very driven towards learning a curriculum. And they'd also have some kind of personal independence where they could make their own way to the university, make friends in a structured environment, but also kind of get an insider glimpse into what college life was like. And these are the type of courses that we offer on this early university entrance. Sports science, they can do biomechanics or athletic therapy. In physics, they can do light and optics and electricity and magnetism and different things. In engineering, they can do electronics or materials engineering. In maths, they can do processing and problem solving. And they can do how life works as part of a biology module. So again, these are actual third level university modules that they can take concurrently with the university system and learn these at their own pace and enjoy that too. And these are just some quotes. Hopefully I'm not blocking the screen for one or two of them, but I can read out a couple of them anyway. Which the students themselves said, was it something I was prepared for? No, it was 10 times better than anything I could ever have imagined. It was the perfect environment for learning, cooperatively competitive environment. I think that's nice, cooperatively competitive. Sometimes those two things are not interchangeable, and that's nice to say that. And everyone intertwined with the social aspect. And then another student said, you're mixing with other like-minded students. Everyone was there for the same task. Objectively, everyone kind of did their best to help each other and to progress themselves. And I think that that's a brilliant kind of a way of looking at things and a lovely model to do, because I think that too often with research in general and with high ability researchers, we're very, very prone to pitting them against each other. We're very prone to putting them into competitions, very prone to rewarding the best and leaving the second to, look very sad as the one who wins gets their prize. And I think that we need a lot more cooperative environments where people are going to work together to achieve it. And I think that particularly if they're going to work in any research lab or anything, they're going to find that cooperation is very necessary. And sometimes it's not all that evident in bright students who prefer sometimes to work alone. We recently started another project, we started it during a lockdown in our university called Early Research Network, where we were kind of given a lot of students were giving us things like, they were quite bored with their online learning that they were getting from school, and it wasn't challenging enough. Could they do something a little bit different? We didn't have access to the university at the time. We're actually running it this year a little bit differently with access to the university, but we previously did it where they signed on at home and they were given topics in science, and they could work with science researchers to design their own little mini research project. And they would be assigned to a mentor, and these mentors would help them to write and document some research. And then after they produced this piece of research, they would be able to do a virtual conference to present it to peers and guests. And it was a very successful project or program, very nice thing for people to do, very different to school, but also teaching them how research actually works, because I think that that's something that a lot of people are unaware of until they go to third level. Sometimes they're unaware of it at undergraduate level because they're fed material at that point. It's very nice for them to actually engage in their own research project and something they might be interested in. And we were amazed at the level of dedication to task a lot of these people who were as young as 13 and 14 to do their own little projects. And they could choose their own area of interest. They learned about nature, history, philosophy of science. They learned how to read academic literature and write a proposal. They learned about things like ethics and how you collect data and analyze results. And it was interesting. These are all kind of skills that we assume scientists or researchers will have. But I suppose it's interesting to know at what age they develop these skills or how they hone them or understand them. And it was great to see younger people than normal, than you'd expect, engaging in this material very quickly and doing their own projects in a really interesting fashion. And just to give you the kind of projects that they did, and these are, again, bearing in mind, I think the top one is from a 13-year-old who wrote Man's Best Friend or Man's Worst Enemy, a qualitative study of the microbial community found on pet dogs. A 14-year-old then did this one, an investigation into the impacts of nuclear power plants on the environment relative to other forms of energy production and suggesting viable options to reduce pollution. And then a 15-year-old did a project on the impacts of increasing acidity on luminosity of pyrocystic fusiformis. So again, this was really eye-opening and great for these students to have access to some current PhD researchers that we had in the university who were studying related topics, who could give them an insight into what their day looked like and how being a researcher, what it was like and whether this might be appealing or interesting to them. And then rather than just finishing on that, then they set them little projects for them to do themselves that they could actually become a researcher and do it and have access to it. And the great thing that this project, which we're very excited about as having a great future, is that people did it from home. Like they didn't have access to the university. This year, we're able to do it where they can have access to labs and stuff, but they actually stuck at it for a semester last year at home. They contacted each other via social media. They did the experiments on Zoom and different things. And some of the results and outcomes were wonderful. And it's a great testament to young people that if you engage them, it's something that they actually like to do, that they can really achieve very highly in it. The last thing I'm going to talk about is a kind of a worldwide project, which people might be familiar with. I'm sure there's some people there out there listening who are part of it. We've had some good success with it. The World Giftedness Center in Dubai has got this global talent mentoring program. And it's an online mentoring program for really high ability students in science, technology, engineering, maths, and medical sciences, STEM, with the extra M being medical science. And we have these kind of amazing students and we get them mentored by international experts in their field. And I think that this is very important because a lot of them at that age would have no access to leaders or experts in the field or people who are doing the research that we're reading about in OECD or in the news at various points. And this was a great way of mapping these incredibly talented students with people who had eminent achievement in these particular fields. And this kind of networking opportunity, it's a good extension of what Chilla was talking about the talent support network and people helping each other out and people working to achieve goals for these high ability students. And it's only started this project and we've had good success. So you can nominate, it's a very good project because everything is done volunteering on a nomination basis. We nominate students, but we also nominate mentors. And they're like, so our university would nominate some of their leading researchers in engineering and science to look after people who may be interested across the world in their topics. And I think that was a good thing because sometimes people are working very specifically on projects that only they understand themselves because they've been working on it for so long. And it's not accessible to the public or people don't understand it as much as they possibly should, given the importance of it. So I think it was good for them to have a look at like 15, 16-year-olds coming in going, I'm interested in what you're doing. Please explain it to me in a more easy fashion. And it gives them a kind of a way of addressing and working with these things. And I think it's going to be a nice program over the years, and we'll probably see some world-class researchers coming out of it, having had this opportunity to be mentored by the best in the business from a very early age. And I think that this is a nice project and definitely something that I would encourage anyone who works with bright students to think about getting involved in. I think I've just done my time there. Might have been a couple of minutes left. But thank you very much for listening. If you need any information about anything that we do, or if you want access to materials or anything, please contact me. We're very much we love working and collaborating with people ourselves at our university. We've worked with colleagues across Europe, in Slovenia, with Professor Mojca Jurasevich, who I know was speaking earlier at this conference related to working with gifted students. And it's nice to share ideas and to talk with other experts in the field and get collaboration and cooperation, which is much needed in this realm. And it's great to work with people like Chilla too, who are very kind of want to kind of participate and get networking opportunities available for everybody who's involved in the field, which I think is sometimes not as easy as it sounds, but the more people that work in it, the more access people will have. So that's where I'm at.
Dr. Colm O'Reilly, thank you very much for your time and the experiences that you shared with us. As you said, the cooperation is very important in any field in science and especially in this one. So thank you very much for taking your time and sharing everything with us.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I really enjoyed it.